Welcome to Jay and Nicole's Learning Lab podcast, where we explore the future of online education. Today, we're tackling a challenge that a lot of parents and teachers face, and that is keeping students engaged during holiday breaks. Joining us is Katie Prescott, the founder of the Abridge Academy, who will share a lot of practical strategies for balancing family time with learning momentum. From holiday-themed projects to cross-cultural approaches, we're covering everything educators need to know about making breaks both fun and educational. Nicole?
Well, thank you so much, Jay. And Katie, we are so excited to have you here today. And I cannot wait to talk about this Abridge Academy that you are the founder of. I think this is going to be a huge boom for a lot of parents, especially with the holidays coming up, which brings us to our myth today of kids can't keep up their learning over the holidays without structured school time. How do you feel about this myth? Do you think this is relevant?
I feel like there's always a challenge during the school holidays to ensure students can keep up with their learning, at least not forget things that they've learned during school time. And certainly, if you look at some of the data and the research that goes into, there's been a lot of debate actually in the UK, where I'm from, about the length of our school holidays. And the idea is that, longer breaks, there's a lot of data showing that students forget a lot over those breaks. And then they come back to school with up to several months of learning loss due to not reviewing or engaging in learning. So I think that's a challenge that a lot of parents are, kind of concerned about, and of course a lot of teachers as well. But at the same time, the school holidays are also an opportunity for students to have a bit of fun, to enjoy, spending time with family, to enjoy traveling perhaps, or just doing, sports and other things. So I think it's always a bit of a challenge that parents have got to try and balance formal learning with actually enjoying the holidays and that sort of out of school learning that you get from sports and hanging out with friends and family, to make sure that students are, not forgetting things, but also not just, you need to have a bit of a break from the school environment as well.
Well, just like adults when we go to work, we look forward to our breaks as well. We need that mental space, right? That getaway from that stress. So I think that's very interesting when we're going to be diving into your academy here. But before we do that, can you tell us a bit about your background?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Great to have, we're great to invite you to join you guys on this podcast. I really appreciate it. And my name is Katie. I'm from the UK. I am a classroom teacher. I taught in the UK, China, and Japan before. And I've also been teaching online on and off for the last 10 or more years now. I'm getting old. I think it's been probably more like 12 years now.
Please.
Let's not talk about how
Please.
long each of us have been teaching.
Yes. But yeah, and I set up Abridge Academy back in 2020. And the goal was to offer much more interactive and engaging teaching materials for online teachers with sort of fun activities, things that kids can actually click on and move and play and engage with on the screen to make online learning a lot more fun. I think, at the time, a lot of teachers were using like PDF textbooks and things like that, which is fine, but it's just not interactive and fun, particularly for young learners. So I wanted to have that structured step-by-step curriculum approach that you get with those sort of textbooks, but much more fun, much more engaging, and taking advantage of everything we can do in an online environment. And I know some teachers out there might be familiar with companies like VIP Kid, or I used to teach for Powerfish before, and they had that sort of online curriculum. Yeah. But we wanted to have that, but for independent teachers, without there's a lot of problems with some of those companies and the sort of pay that they want teachers, that side of things. So I wanted something that is for independent teachers, but is fun and engaging and interactive for the online learning kind of world.
That's interesting that you mentioned that, because when we think of online engaging curriculum or platforms, a lot of times we think of the large companies, right? Like Palfish, for example, since you
Mhm.
mentioned that. And it's very interesting that you mentioned that this is for the solo teacher. So are you saying that this gives solo teachers the access and the ability to offer those services that is normally not available to them as the teacher themselves independently, to give that interactive lesson?
Exactly. Yeah. I think something that parents like about those companies is that they know the curriculum is sort of structured and organized, so their kids going to have some nice steady progress. They know the lessons are going to be fun and interactive because that's what those companies advertise. They know they're going to get out of class materials, all that kind of stuff. And sometimes it's really challenging for teachers who are operating privately, finding their own private students for learning online. Um, it's really challenging for those teachers to be able to offer something that can compete with those big companies, um, but can still be specialized and a lot more individual for the student, which is the kind of the benefit for the kid of having a private teacher rather than a company kind of platform. So it was trying to, my goal is try and give teachers the ability to offer that product, that service that those companies have, while still being individualized and personal that you get by having a private teacher.
I think private teachers have a big advantage here because you lose flexibility when you teach with like Palfish because the rule was you got to finish every single slide. I worked there for like 3 years and we don't have to do that. We don't have to do that. If we don't make it through the whole lesson, that's okay. We can pick it up on the next one. And we can't bring it when you work with those big companies, you can't bring in extra material. And I think these other things you're talking about, I think they work really, really well for independent teachers. I think it's the way to go. And parents, if you're listening, listen to her. She knows what she's talking about.
Well,
All right, get away from Palfish.
right? I completely agree with you because the whole point of going to a solo teacher like you, myself, or Jay is that we offer that individual service. We can dive deeper. We can make sure there's no learning gaps. But at the same time, we're limited because we don't have the financial ability to develop our own, software program, or to be able to do those bells and whistles. So the fact that, the everyday average solo teacher can incorporate what parents think is really helpful and engaging for the student while also getting that specialized attention. I think it's a big game changer for a lot of teachers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really would highlight the benefit to parents of having that flexibility with a private tutor. As you've mentioned before, I talk with Palfish as well, and like their lessons, I mean, I'm sure they work really well for a certain kind of student, but their lessons were very repetitive. So sometimes
Rudimentary.
I'd have students, yeah, sometimes I have students who feel like they're repeating the same thing and again and again and again. And of course, repetition and consolidation is important. But like if they've got it, why waste another 3 lessons doing the same thing? And then on the other hand, you'd have students who the company put them at too high a level and they just did not understand what was going on in the slides. They
Right.
couldn't access the basic kind of questions to be able to understand what was going on. And as a teacher, we had to teach every single slide. We had to read off the script and
Yes.
go through the lesson. And it's very
Yep.
frustrating knowing that if it was my private student, we could have gone back and reviewed, consolidated things or sped up bits they already knew. There's so much more you can do when you're a private tutor, not limited by the restrictions of those companies. Yeah.
Do you
Can
do you
bring
remember
in
do you remember the recycling lesson
Oh gosh, I've
at
tried to
Palfish?
block those memories of Palfish in my mind.
I'm loving this answer. I actually did apply for Palfish and I got hired, but I never actually taught because once I saw it, I was like, no. But I worked for a couple others and I have friends who have worked for places like Rabbit Ears and stuff, and they would actually get penalized.
Mhm.
Like it wasn't even that they had to finish the slides by the end of the class. Like each slide had an actual timer and they had to do like 2 minutes on this slide, 1 minute on this slide, 30 seconds on this slide. I mean,
Oh
it
my
was
god.
it was that divided. And it does such a huge disservice because not every child learns at the same pace, nor do they digest the information the same way. And so by not giving them the opportunity to express whether they have actually understood the material or not, or even to go off material and bring in extra examples, which I do constantly, it does a disservice. And it's a big disservice for the parents as well, because, we all know our current economy. It's difficult. Our money is extremely valuable. And to work that hard for that premium service and not get the results, I think is a real, injustice.
Mhm. And I'd also say another thing we can do as independent teachers is apply that learning to the student specific context. I have some students who they were learning English in order to move to an English medium school. So I knew they really need to focus on academic English. They really need to work on some of their writing skills, for example. And they also need to be able to speak and make friends at their new school. So we'd focus on aspects of English that relate to the actual reason for learning English, rather than I like apples. Do you like apples? Yes, I do. No, I don't. The kind of textbook English you learn in school when it's just for, I guess, passing exams or something, but it's not applied to a real usage of English, because I've never had a conversation ever in my life about whether or not I like
Right?
apples with a
Right?
friend.
Well, and I tell my students, I'm just like, yeah, I teach grammar and stuff, but I don't teach grammar with grammar lessons. I teach it in a different, my personal style is I bring in other subjects to teaching. And so,
Mhm.
because I started my journey as a homeschool parent, so we did the all around curriculum where everything was interconnected. So, I find it, oh my goodness. I told them, I said, okay, I am the English teacher and I will fall asleep in a grammar class.
Yeah.
I am not teaching a class that I am also going to fall asleep in. I
Nicole
purposely do that.
Nicole and I we use one of the same agents in China. The grammar sections of her lessons, oh, they're terrible. They're terrible, and I hate teaching them. But
They're
anyway,
painful.
oh, they're brutal, brutal. So, um, what do you suggest people do for holiday classes so that they don't feel like school? Because I, for a 2-week break, I think it's okay for kids not to do any learning. I actually think it's okay. But what is something we can do for like, not Thanksgiving, because, not everybody's in America, but things like Christmas. What do we do for Christmas? How can we do that? Or New
For
Year's?
the new year that's coming up, like in a lot of Asian countries, they actually will
Right?
take off a very significant amount of
Oh,
time.
like 6 weeks sometimes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes, yeah, it's huge.
I think there's so much you can do during school holidays. I have some students who just want to continue normal lessons. And like, that's fine if they want to do that. I try to make it a little bit more sort of jazzed up for the class a bit. Like maybe I'll put in a fun themed background or something, or we might use like a holiday themed reward system or something like that. But if students want to continue their standards ongoing classes, then that's fine. But I think it can also be really fun to offer something a little bit different during the holidays, particularly when it links into, you mentioned like Christmas or Thanksgiving, perhaps if you're American. As you can tell from my accent, I'm not American either, so it's not something I celebrate, and I don't teach American students, so it's a bit irrelevant.
Right.
But I think it's nice to bring in aspects of culture and celebrations from all around the world into our lessons. So some of my students will do like specific holiday theme classes, like a Christmas themed lesson. And I say Christmas themed in kind of quite a loose sense.
Yeah.
It tends to be more sort of like a winter theme, designing
Yeah,
a
sure.
snowman or something.
Right.
These kind of fun things. And I still link it into English learning. So we mentioned before about the financial pressures on parents that don't necessarily want to be paying for a class for the kids just kind of playing around and having fun all the time. Always making sure it links into some kind of learning goals,
Right.
or it reviews and consolidates what they've already learnt. But it just gives them that little bit of a break from the standard textbook style learning they might have been doing otherwise. I also do some like topical theme lessons. So, as you interesting, you mentioned about sort of subject related English and things like that before, because I actually originally trained as a science teacher. That was way back when I first started teaching, was teaching science. So sometimes during the holidays, with some of my students who are kind of doing science themed class with me, we might do project based activities during the holidays, doing a scientific project like experiments or something.
Right.
I've also done debating classes or like
I
reading
was
focus
gonna ask you about
classes.
that.
That's like a different kind of learning approach. Yeah.
Yeah, with your debating classes, do you get just non-native speakers or do you get even native speakers joining them?
I have a mixture actually. I've been teaching debating for 3 or 4 years now. What are we in? Coming to
Uh-huh.
2025. Oh my goodness, time has gone quickly. 5 years almost now, like debating classes I think I've been doing. And I would say it's been a whole mixture. And I think what's really great is when you have a whole combination of students from different countries, different sort of linguistic backgrounds joining those classes. Because, yes, debating is a great way to learn English. And certainly we might cover certain grammar points, like,
Mhm.
trying to think example there off the top of my head. Like if blah, 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 then blah, blah, blah. These sort of
Right.
simple sentence structures.
Mm.
conditional
Second
sentences, things like that.
conditional.
Exactly, yeah. I was trying to think of the word from my head, like, oh my god, what's the word for if? Sentences with if, conditional, right? So sometimes we touch upon those kind of grammar topics, which is, of course, very relevant to ESL students. But also, it's an opportunity for students who've got English as a native language to develop more public speaking skills, the ability to express themselves more eloquently, to use evidence to back up a point. Don't
Yep.
just say, oh, I think blah, blah, blah. Why do you think that? I think this because blah, blah, blah. Because this data, this evidence, these statistics, we look at graphs, real data to back up their arguments and how you can incorporate that into a debate to strengthen your point. We talk about how to critique other people's arguments. If someone's made one claim, you could say, well, you've forgotten to consider this aspect, or picking out flaws in arguments, things like that. So it's something that people in native speaking countries also take debating classes. Maybe with slightly different goals to ESL students, but I love to have the combination of both in the same class because they can learn from each other. I think that's really fantastic about that sort of debating theme.
Sure.
I like that you bring in both of them because an ESL student is going to have a different approach and purpose behind their debate style than a native student would. So they actually are learning from each other in a very unique way. And also, a lot of times a native speaker, I know for American students, it is kind of true, the stereotype. We're not as worldly traveled as a lot of other English-speaking countries.
That's a really good point.
My mom has been to Canada.
Present company excluded. But even for me, for instance, for myself, until I moved to the Philippines, I had never really been outside my country other than for one trip to Canada and like one trip to Mexico crossing the border, right? And that just has to do with the sheer size of our country. I mean, like, so it gives those students, for example, in America, to get an inside view on a more of a worldly way of looking at things. And it gives other students opportunities also to see how different countries approach things and how they get their statistics, maybe their viewpoints. That's very interesting.
Yeah, I think they can learn a lot from each other. And as you say, I don't want to stereotype American students too much, but I think it is partly you say due to geography. Many American students don't have as many opportunities to travel internationally because they can travel nationally instead, within America.
Well, when it takes you 7 days nonstop to travel from East Coast to West Coast.
Gosh. It always shocks me how big America is. Like coming from the UK, you can drive across the UK in a few hours, the longest distance from where I live and the furthest south of the UK all the way up to Scotland. I mean, that's maybe a day in a car.
That's a day trip for us.
Yeah.
Like, it's true what they say about the distance for us. I mean, like, for real, it's just.
Yeah, but guys, they have this incredible invention called the plane.
Yes, but when it's cheaper for an American
I get
drive.
It's cheaper to drive a family than to fly a family.
Right?
I'm just joking.
In the UK, it's the opposite. It's cheaper to fly and do a holiday in Europe than it is to go to another part of the UK quite often.
Really?
Yeah, particularly if you've got like family. Ryanair flights are so cheap. You can get to Europe for the equivalent of about $20 to $30. You can go to pretty much anywhere in Europe. You'd have to be careful what time of flight you pick, but you can get very cheap flights to Europe.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm sorry, I'm blown away. That's amazing. Well, I mean, but I know that a lot of my British friends, and I've acquired quite a few international friends now that I'm overseas, they were all quite shocked about finding out that most of us in America don't have passports. And we just don't do that. And they're just like, well, why not? I'm like, do you want to know how often I've actually left my country? And before September 11th, we could actually cross our borders without passports. We just needed
we could go to Canada and Mexico,
with the driver's license. Yeah.
Because like everyone in the UK, not absolutely everyone, but I'd say probably 90%. I don't have the exact numbers, but pretty much everyone has a passport. I've never not owned a passport. I mean, to be fair, I have a lot of international family. So since I was a kid, I can always, like, my earliest memories are sat on planes going out to Hong Kong, like I have that slightly more international exposure perhaps as a kid, but I can remember one friend in school having to apply for a passport when we went on a school trip to France or somewhere. And I was like really confused as to how she was like allowed to live in the country without a passport. It never occurred to me that you could exist without having some kind of ID. And a passport is a standard ID in the UK.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, though. So many people here were so surprised. And I'm like, well, no, our standard ID is our driver's license.
Yeah, but for kids, like kids don't have driver's licenses, so what do they use?
They don't need one because they're minors.
Yeah, but
See, that's the thing. That's the thing. That's what I'm saying. We
They don't
don't
have
need.
ID.
They don't have ID. They don't need it because they're a minor.
Right.
yeah.
Now, I'm interested in something that's project based, like your science projects, because I teach some science. I was a meteorologist in the Air Force for 12 years. I teach a meteorology class to kids. I've got a couple groups running.
He does an
Do
amazing meteorology class. I did a live with him. It's cool.
but do you have like science projects that would fit into things like that? Because if I
Mm.
can grab some material that I don't have to make, I'm more than happy to do that.
Yeah, I've done all kinds of science things. I'd say if we go back to Abridge Academy curriculum in particular, there's the Science Boost
Yeah,
course, which is mostly based on the UK Key Stage 3 curriculum, which is about middle school kind
that's
of
the age that
science.
I target. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's that much specifically on meteorology specifically. In fact, I don't think there's anything specifically on meteorology, but there's a lot
Okay.
of fun basic science kind of
Sure.
stuff in
Sure.
there. But yeah, in terms of the projects I've done though, a lot of the science projects I do are not necessarily like based off lesson slides.
Mhm.
So obviously Age Academy is amazing. Please sign up for Age Academy. Check it out. It's awesome.
Yes,
But
pump it. Pump
realistically,
it.
yeah, a lot of the project-based stuff I do is actually just a few worksheet type things, and then from that the kids are doing their own experiments. So I'll
Right.
get them to, I guess you could do something like doing monitoring weather patterns. I don't know. But they're going
Oh,
to collect
no,
their own
yes. They
data,
take
and then
yeah, they take weather observations. I teach them how
yeah,
to analyze weather charts. We
nice.
do the cloud types, the water cycle, all that stuff. But yeah.
Oh, I have a lesson in the curriculum about the water cycle. That is one kind of meteorology related class.
Yep.
There we go. But yeah, I've done mostly projects like that where the kids will go and collect their own data from whatever kind of experiment they're doing, and then we work on like how to draw graphs using that data, how to analyze the data, getting to put together like mini reports. Sometimes it's a poster presentation. Sometimes
Uh-huh.
it'll be writing a more formal report depending on like their age and what they're trying to focus on.
Yeah, I
So this is
found
something I
that
do really enjoy doing.
there was a big need or desire, especially in Asia. I'm not sure about outside of Asia, but these like STEM classes taught in English. There's a
Yes.
big desire for that. That's why I never even considered doing a weather class until earlier this year. And I'm like, huh, that's stupid. I did weather for 12 years. I can teach that blindfolded.
Yeah, I
There's
haven't.
definitely a lot of demand for like STEM related classes for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I use a lot of, like I said, other subjects for English just because, well, even I will fall asleep in a boring English class. So, but I use a lot of science for English, and it's a lot of fun, and it's interesting. Or social studies, cultural studies, things like that. I love National Geographic. It is like my favorite thing to use. I have the teacher tools, so the interactive teacher tool systems for many of their. I have a lot of their products, but it's unique because I like using English, and I think the kids like it a lot more when it's relevant to like
Right.
the real world. Because a lot
I
of
like
times,
apples.
right? Exactly. I mean, like, how boring is that? I mean, seriously, are you going to remember the word apple after that class? No, because I checked out about 5 seconds into that. That's the thing. You
Now,
have to make it relevant because if it's not relevant, it has no meaning. And that's why they don't retain the vocabulary.
I want to
Absolutely.
I want to clarify something about Abridge Academy for our listener. Um, the Abridge Academy is for teachers, right? They get
Yes.
access. They pay a monthly fee, and I know it's very affordable, and they can use these lessons with their students, and that's it, right? That's what it is. Or is it for parents too?
So it's aimed at
Homeschoolers, maybe.
teachers. So teachers, little sales pitch here, but teachers get access to some interactive lesson resources, like lesson slides that they can use in their online classes. It also includes things like trial classes. There's actually a free version as well as a paid version. The free version's got the trial class materials, student onboarding resources, English placement tests, and a whole bunch of free lessons across various levels of the curriculum as well. And then the paid version's got access to like everything. There's lesson slides, there's homework workbooks, printable flashcards, games and activities. what else? Lesson previews. So all of the supplementary materials that go alongside the stuff you actually use in the live class. But yeah, it's primarily aimed at teachers. I do know at least 1 or 2 Abridge Academy members who are actually parents rather than teachers, but they're kind of like taking the homeschooling parent kind of approach.
Right.
So in that sense, they are the teacher at home. If that makes, you know what I mean? Like a
Yeah, I
homeschooling.
got.
kind of
I
approach.
was a homeschool parent,
Yeah.
so
And
Amazing.
what are some like new lessons you have coming for this holiday season? I'm not going to call it Christmas. Because there's Christmas, there's New Year's, there's Chinese New Year, and if you're in America and listening, we've got Thanksgiving. If you didn't know,
well, in
what have you
Canada
got
just
there?
finished Thanksgiving.
Oh yeah,
They have theirs in October.
There's a different date. That's even more confusing. I didn't even know that.
I didn't. I know that just because of where I live in the United States. It was very
Ah.
closer to the border. But yeah, they have theirs in October because they have a different harvest season
Mm.
because they're farther north. So yeah, theirs is in October.
Makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. So with Abridge Academy, we've got lessons for all of those holidays that you mentioned. There are like themed lessons that you can access. They're actually in the free tier. So if you just want to check them out and you don't want to pay anything, that's fine. Like the holiday theme lessons are in the free tier. And there's like things like designing a snowman, talking about Christmas traditions around the world. And talking about Christmas, there was something that's just been coming up. I've been revamping the Christmas lessons actually literally this today and yesterday to like get them ready for December. There's things like dressing up Santa and talking about different clothes, things like that. And they're all linked to specific English topics. So like dressing Santa is linked to learning about clothes.
Right.
Building a snowman is about parts of the body. Gosh, there's like I think
Shapes.
6 or so lessons. Shapes, yeah, we learn about shapes and colours when they talk about decorating a Christmas tree. So there's all these different themed lessons, and they all link to sort of specific English topics, but it's in a much more fun sort of holiday theme. Similarly, there's one lesson available for Thanksgiving that's more of a creative project, building a turkey-themed pen pot thing that they can kind of adapt in different ways. So
They
there's some
don't get to
suggestions of
draw
how
their
to
hand
link that
to
in.
make the turkey. They don't
Yeah,
get to
so
draw
you
their
get like
hand to
Oh,
a
make the turkey.
fingers.
exactly. Yeah. So that's a bit fun, like a kind of creative project. There's also a few lessons for Chinese New Year or Lunar New Year, I should say.
Yeah.
And the kind of I don't know what the normal New Year, English New Year. What was on the 1st of January?
Solar.
That's the solar.
Calendar.
Yeah.
Calendar New Year.
Yeah, calendar that works
Trying to
too.
think, what's the opposite of Lunar New Year? Like calendar,
Solar.
Solar.
Solar New Year?
It
Yes.
is. It's built
Yes,
off
because
the
it's in the
solar
sun.
calendar.
I should know this, science teacher. Yeah.
I'm loving this, by the way. This is
Come
funny.
on, Katie, science this up.
Oh my gosh, sometimes some of the students like ask me questions on things like that, and I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, Katie, you're a science teacher. Oh yeah, I forgot that. Trying to remember these things. I was literally teaching just the other day, actually, one of the science classes. Again, it's also in the Abridge Academy lessons, is on a like rotating like planets and how the planets move and rotate around the sun, and they're spinning on
Yes,
their
yes,
axis, and how that
yes.
creates days and months and
Mhm.
years and seasons and all
On
of that.
orbits and yeah,
Yeah. One of my
how the
students is
axis
really into
moves.
space, so we had a whole lesson like just focused on that, and got another, I think, 5 lessons planned for space to do with that student because he just loves space.
Nice.
So anyway, got off topic. Yeah, there's lots of holiday theme lessons, and they're all themed around each holiday, pretty much.
Okay. Now, how do you format these for younger kids? I find these types of lessons are very easy to do. But what about older students?
Or young adults.
Yeah.
Yeah.
15 years old, 16 years old. They don't really want to do Santa Claus.
No. It's interesting because I find some of my students, even the older ones, do enjoy the fun lessons. I'm not gonna lie, they do enjoy having a bit of fun. But I find with older kids, they much prefer things that are more linked to their specific interests or opinions, or like practical applications that they can use themselves. So young kids, they want the games, they want like repetitions, fun rewards,
Right.
activities. Older students, I think linking it to their own personal interests can really help. This is where I think some of the debating classes are really helpful. Some of those do link to holiday themes, and some of them are much broader. But yeah, debates around different topics, things like academic linked classes. So it could be, let's talk about Christmas again, like writing a thank you letter. Let's imagine you've got a student who's like maybe a teenage
Oh, that's a
student,
great
but their
idea.
English level's kind of low. Yeah, something like writing a thank you letter. Thank you, maybe for Thanksgiving. Thank you to my teacher for whatever you're thankful for,
Right.
or for
Grateful.
Christmas. Thank you for the gift. That's something that's most holidays. a lot of them involve gift giving of some kind. So writing a thank you letter is a really easy
Yeah.
one that is applied. It's focusing on
Relevant.
academic skill of writing. It's relevant. But it's sort of linking to their own personal experiences because they can think about what presents did you get this Christmas? Okay, I received this and that and the other. What did you think about them? What did you enjoy? How did you use them? You know, this gift. I know you got given an Xbox. What game did you play? Whatever. And then they can write about it in their thank you letter. So it's sort of, I don't know. Some people think that sounds boring because you're writing a letter, but it's not. It's talking about their own personal experiences and talking about and making it relevant to them.
I
So
think
that's
it
something that I
might
think
be
works well with the older students.
I think it might be complicated to get the students engaged in it if they come from a country that doesn't celebrate Christmas.
Yeah.
I think that would be difficult, I think.
Yeah, but I think there's other things you can do that doesn't have to be Christmas, like directly Christmas linked. So
Right.
that's just something I'd
Right.
recommend, you know, always being aware of your students' sort of cultural and religious background as to whether they even celebrate Christmas. And some parents may specifically request that you don't do things that are Christmas related, perhaps for religious reasons, for example. But say a winter themed class is a much more kind of broadly applicable.
Right.
And okay, maybe you can't write a thank you letter in a generic winter theme, but you could
Yeah,
do something like
you can sneak a little
reviewing.
Santa in there.
Yeah, so Santa's, you know, Santa's not religious, right?
Right.
Or,
So
like
yeah.
for the new year, right?
Mm.
Maybe you could write what you wish to happen for that year, right?
Yeah.
So, goals you wish to accomplish next year, goals that you have accomplished this year that need to go into next year.
Love
Those
that.
are different things that we can do that way. What I found it was really, I don't know if you've ever done this. Have you ever asked some of my students do this? This is why I sometimes ask for video submission homework.
I have some
So,
students who enjoy doing that. Some who absolutely hate video, but I have some
right.
kids who enjoy like like for
These
example, I asked them
kids
to
that
create a
do this.
story. Some kids will want to write the story. Some kids will want to do a video of them talking about the story.
I
Um,
had some of
yeah,
them actually do video productions. It was very
nice.
interesting. I've saved them because they've been so cool.
And actually, talking about a video, that's another thing that can work really well as like a holiday project for older students. It doesn't necessarily have to be directly linked to something like Christmas. So things like films, they'll be watching videos or films and things that could be related to, well, pretty much anything, but like writing a review of a film or
There
creating a
you go.
storyboard talking about a film they've watched. That kind of fun activity is really good to do in like a school holidays when they might be spending more time watching films and, you know, I don't know, looking at YouTube or whatever. But it's giving them that English practice, and again, it's not directly linked to Christmas if they don't want it to be.
They can do an interview style one too. I've done that before when it's been siblings where they do the interview style where one has the questions, the other one does the answers, and then they flip roles. So it can be interesting. So I was
I need to.
actually a little confused, to be honest. I want to come back to this Abridge Academy. I was confused, and so I would like some clarification. I thought it was just a software that I went on and gave me all the bells and whistles, and I used my own curriculum. But yet you mentioned that you had an entire curriculum set, so I misunderstood that completely. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, no worries. So Abridge Academy is the curriculum. It's not the teaching platform or software. So it's interactive lesson slides with a bunch of supplementary resources to go alongside that. But yeah, it's pre-made lessons essentially for teachers to use for their online classes.
I don't know how I misunderstood that. Maybe it's because
And
I was listening to the other one last week.
the lessons, I guess, can be used in some of the various independent teacher platforms like, Fun Class, Class In, Koala Go, all these that can all work. Does it work through like the co-browser or do they actually get the files?
Yep. So it works through any co-browsing platform or screen sharing platform. If you want interactivity, you need a co-browsing platform. If you don't mind too much about the interactivity, and the lesson's designed in such a way that you can do it without having the students click and play things if you don't want them to, then a screen sharing platform like Zoom, Booth, those sort of platforms are also
Yeah,
fine.
yeah, those.
But yeah, I'd say probably the most popular and the one I use myself is Koala Go. I absolutely love Koala Go. So much fun. Super interactive and engaging for kids. I know Fun Class is gaining popularity. I haven't really tried it out much myself. I think there's still a few kind of technical things they're working on to make it a bit more user friendly and compatible. But that's another one that I know is gaining popularity. And there's a few other co-browsing ones out there, but honestly, they're so much more expensive, the other ones I wouldn't really recommend. So the main one I recommend is Koala Go. And of course, I'm keeping an eye on Fun Class. That looks really exciting as well going forward.
So what other digital learning tools that do you suggest to use alongside this?
There is so many things out there. I mean, yeah, there really are so many different options. And I think as a teacher, it's good to have a variety of different tools. I think we mentioned before about kids getting bored of doing the same thing all the time. I think
Yeah.
if you use exactly the same lesson slides, like same style of slides, or using exactly the same quiz tools or something every single class, it
Teacher
gets
this
repetitive and
again,
boring. Yeah, not another Kahoot quiz.
right?
And
Well,
as a teacher
come
in school,
on,
right,
Jay.
every time
Do
at the
better.
beginning when Kahoot first was taking off, all the kids were like, "Oh yay, Kahoot quiz!" Within about a year, oh, not another Kahoot quiz. Is there anything else? So I think mix it up. So I love Wordwall. Wordwall is great because they've got so many different kinds of activities. So
Right.
there's like matching activities, fill in the gap. They've got ones that look like more like games. You can click on things and move things on the screen. Those are different types of activities. Word searches, crosswords, all of that can be built within Wordwall. And it literally click of a few buttons to create an activity. One click to change it to a different type of activity. So you can
Right.
change it from a word search into a crossword, into a matching definitions to keywords task, all of that. And it also has themed things. So we mentioned before about Christmas and like holiday themes. Something I love doing with Wordwall is that any activity I've got with one button, I can change it into a different theme. So if it's coming up to Christmas, let's make a winter themed one and just click a button and now it's got winter sort of vibe and skin to it all. Whereas in the summer, you can pick a summer theme and it's all bright and colorful with flowers and whatever. So that's a really good one. Another one I use is learning apps. Learning apps is a similar idea to Wordwall. It doesn't look as pretty. Um, and it feels a little bit clunkier, but it's free, which is nice. Whereas Wordwall, I got the pro plan for Wordwall. The free plan for Wordwall is
Yeah.
kind of quite basic. It's just to test it out, really. But you can only create, I think, 5 activities, and then that's it on the free plan. So Wordwall, you kind of had to pay for. Learning apps is free, but it doesn't have as much beautification filters. But it's a similar kind of concept. And then in terms of quizzes, we mentioned Kahoot already. Kahoot's great, but there's also Quizzes, which is spelled with 2 Z's on the end. Quiz is like quizzes. That's another popular one. Blookit, I really enjoy. And there's quite a lot of quiz tools actually out there, to be honest. If you just Google interactive online quiz, there'll be about 50 that pop up. Blookit is fun for vocab practice in particular. And I like the fact that you can build quizzes. It's like multiple choice quizzes. And the quizzes themselves look very similar to the way a Kahoot quiz works with their multiple choice questions, but it links it in with like actual games. So the kids can be playing like, what's that one where you have the thing that goes around eating things?
Pac-Man?
Or like Minesweeper, Pac-Man, Minesweeper. These kind of like slightly it's like kind of retro games that I can remember
Mhm.
playing as a kid. Those kind of games, but then every time you get to a certain point in the game, it pops up with some quiz questions you have to answer to proceed to the next bit of the game. And they have probably like 20 different games or something you can play. Some of them are just basic quizzes, some of them are more like these retro themed games and stuff. And it's just so motivating for the students to be playing something they think is just a fun game.
Right.
And then to get more points or to proceed, they have to answer the quiz questions. So Blookit I use a lot, and that works really well for homework as well. It can take a long time in class. If you're playing Blookit in class, it's not really like a 2-3 minute quiz. It's more like
Right.
a 20-minute long game for them to play. But that's great for homework activities.
What
Oh, that's
So
interesting.
yeah,
That can be a very cool homework assignment.
yes. My
what
students
can
love Blookit
parents
quizzes for homework practice, for vocab, and also for some grammar activities you can build within Blookit as well.
That's not one I'm familiar with. I have to check that
I
one
have
out.
not thought of
Check it
that
out; it's
before.
really good.
I do
It's also free,
Wordwall
which is nice.
Oh, is it?
and
Yeah,
Oh,
there's a pro version of Blookit, but I think all you get in the pro version is like more themes that you can apply to the quizzes.
ah,
uh,
I don't know. I've been perfectly happy with the free version for years. So
there you
yeah,
go.
now what are some things that on the parent side, what can parents do
Mm.
during these holidays to encourage the learning, but not feel like a big bad ogre making their kids do homework and studying during the holidays?
I think it's really important for kids to feel like they're having a break, like you say, but still maybe reviewing, consolidating things, or practicing in a different kind of context. One thing I think is a big challenge as well is that sort of screen time versus like education. Kids spend far too much time, in my opinion, staring at the computer screen or iPads and all that kind of stuff. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for parents to outside of formal classes, outside of staring at a screen, playing Block It all day,
Mhm.
do things like off the screen, like
Video
reading
games.
books, video games. Yeah, like, some kids really love video games. Again, that's more screen time. Maybe I'm
Well,
too old-fashioned, but yeah, games that they can play, reading books, going on what I might call like a field trip. And doesn't necessarily mean they have to go to an English-speaking country if they're learning English. They could also just go to a local museum and look at the signs. They often have signs in English, for example. They can get an English audio guide when you go to a lot of
Mhm.
tourist sites. Um, that's a way to go on a trip somewhere together and still practice a little bit of English in a different context. And then you can do follow-on activities from something like that. Like after they've gone on their little field trip to a local museum, they can write a diary entry or write a postcard or create a little storyboard talking about what they saw. Like lots of things you can do like that. Also things like playing board games. You mentioned video games, but some of us who are a little bit more old-fashioned, what we did at home when we were kids was play board games. That's still a thing. So
no, I meant
doing something
video
like
games were
Monopoly.
part of screen time problems, is what I meant.
Yes, yeah. Oh, I see, yeah. So I think board games you can also play where, like, as they play the game, try and speak in English. Practice your numbers as you roll the dice. You can have little quiz cards in order to proceed throughout the game. They had to answer the next question on the quiz, and you could have an iPad to the side, maybe where you've got your English learning quiz that your teacher's built for you, that you play while you're doing the board game to get the points in the game. If that makes sense.
Oh,
And then there's things like worksheets and puzzles, crossword quizzes, things like that, that just feel like more fun than just a basic boring worksheet. Um, and if you don't mind screens too much, then there's a lot of entertaining screen time you can have that can be still educational, like video games. You set the language into English. Wow, magically they're learning English while having fun. Watching
oh,
English cartoons, listening to English music,
I
all
gotta
that kind of
tell
thing.
you, COVID was actually really good for my son. That's when
Hmm.
he was getting old enough to start playing video games. And he gets on there, and of course, they all get on Discord and they talk to each other. Well,
Hmm.
he met kids all over the world. And he also started playing video games with some of my students. They still play today. They
Amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty good. And it really helped develop his vocabulary, but I'm one of those, I think he spends too much time on the computer.
Hmm.
I do. I
I
do.
do think though engaging with international, whether it's media or games or something, is a really great way for language learning. Like for myself, my own Chinese learning, I've been learning Chinese since I was maybe 13, 14. And when I was at school, I have to admit I was not the most dedicated student in the world. So I wasn't bad at Chinese. I got good grades, but I wouldn't say I was good at like speaking outside of class. Okay, I didn't do much practice. But once I started watching like Chinese TV shows or sort of engaging with Chinese kind of communities. There's a lot of
Right.
like around a TV show, there'll be a whole like fandom community of people chatting about what do you think is going to happen in the next episode? Do you want to buy this merch? Whatever. And these kind of communities that kind of linked to TV shows
Right.
or games,
Right.
all that kind of stuff. Suddenly, it's a lot more motivating to learn the language, and you just find yourself accidentally picking up so much language just from watching and
Sure.
engaging with it in a passive
Yeah.
way. And then you want to chat to your new friends you've made, so you better learn how to explain that in Chinese or the target language you're learning because they don't speak your language and vice versa. Um,
Sure. Sure.
well, yeah.
We've talked about what to do while they're on vacation or on a holiday break, right? But when I also find my own children, as an example, while we did do homeschool, we also had traditional schooling as well. I always found that the transition from the break back to school
Oh,
was
yeah.
always a lot more challenging than actually worrying about them during the break. So, how do you suggest or support maybe parents transitioning their kids from that break mindset to back to school mindset?
I think, as you say, it's a big challenge. I think there's a couple of aspects to this challenge. Firstly, there's the we mentioned before about learning gaps, forgetting things during the holidays. This is a one challenge, and there's also the sort of routines of getting back into that school routine, that standard of going into school at like 8 o'clock or whatever, coming home at a set time. If you've got online classes in the evenings, like turning up on time for those classes, doing your homework, all of those sort of routines that you've got out of during the holidays and getting back into them can be really quite a big challenge. Um, a certain amount parents can do on that. For example, setting an alarm to get your kid up in the morning. I mean, this is something that sounds very obvious, but making sure they're going back to that routine, because it's so easy to slip into the, oh, let's just wake up at 9, it's chill in the holidays. Oh, we can
Mm.
go to bed at like 11 o'clock after watching a movie, no problem. So getting them back into the timetable of school. And also setting again those expectations, like always do your homework straight away after school, perhaps, whatever the routine is, but saying, okay, you got back from the school day, let's sit down and do your homework before dinner. You can't watch a movie until you finish your homework, perhaps, or you can't, not have to be super strict, but, getting them back into those routines, that timetable can be a big focus, I think, to get them back in the right sort of frame of mind. And I also think there's a certain amount teachers can do as well on this. So again, with the routine setting, but also things like getting back to your standard lesson vibe. You talked a little
Yeah.
bit about how you can create a kind of holiday theme in your classroom with like a fun themed background. You can dress up with a Santa outfit, all this fun stuff you might be doing during the holidays. So then when the holiday is
The
over,
Grinch.
giving them that visual cue, yeah, not being grumpy, but giving them that visual cue of, okay, the holiday's over now, by dressing back in your normal outfit, going back to your normal background, removing the holiday decor that can sometimes hang around a bit longer, but it just gives them that clearer connection, I think.
You haven't been to the Philippines.
That's why I'm laughing. That's why
Yeah.
we have literally the longest Christmas holiday season in the world.
Oh, wow.
Literally, you can look it up on Google. It
In the
starts
summer,
September 1st and ends
yeah.
mid-January.
What?
Yeah, I know. See, there you go. Look it up on Google. September
I
1st
think
is
in
when
the
the
UK,
holiday season starts here.
that's crazy. I mean, we start seeing adverts around about now, like November. We start seeing Christmas themed adverts. So you can start buying Christmas decorations in shops and things.
Nope.
But for most people, Christmas is December only.
Yeah.
And by the time January comes around, that's it.
January 1st, the Christmas tree should come down. That's how I am.
Yeah, but not here because we have there's another Christmas holiday in January.
Right.
Three Kings.
Yes.
They're
To be fair, you
very
have like a whole
Catholic
after
here.
Christmas. Yeah.
This is a very Catholic place. Very Catholic. They're like super Catholic.
Yeah, starting September 1st, when you go to the malls, they've got the decor starting up and the Christmas songs start.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's also
Yeah.
I the way I look at it is I look at it as a 6-month long art project. So I just slowly
love
start
that.
decorating a little bit. I do it all by hand because I figure I got 6 months to do it. So by the time Christmas rolls around, I'm fully decorated. The problem is taking it all back down.
Gosh,
You
that's like dedication.
I have something in my notes.
Mhm.
And I'm looking at your notes also, and they kind of combine. You talk about redoing content from previous lessons. I find this really necessary actually with the very young, very 3 and 4 years old, even 5 years old. I find that very necessary because, to be honest, there's not enough material for that age that's different. There's just not, and I just find that very necessary to do. Um, Obviously you do too. Yes? No? Maybe so?
Yes.
Yeah.
I
Alright.
think there's nothing wrong with redoing stuff. It's just something I see a lot of teachers kind of worried about sometimes. And they'll message like in our Facebook group or something, and they'll be saying, oh, I'm a bit worried that the student hasn't really learned everything, but they get bored and we do the same thing again. I'm like, actually, no. They love reviewing stuff. They love reading the
Right.
same stories again. They love going back and doing similar activities and games. You can mix it up a bit. Like I mentioned before about how on Wordwall, you
Mhm.
can change the activity from a
Right.
word search into a crossword or something, make it a different theme, but it's still reviewing the same core content. And I think, when you come back, particularly after a holiday period, and they might have forgotten stuff, start with review and assessment of some kind. Do a quiz, okay?
Mhm.
See what they've remembered from the previous semester's work, and then focus on the things that they've forgotten and go back and redo those lessons again. You don't necessarily have to do the whole lesson in depth. You could just pick out some of the activities.
Mhm.
As I said, you could pick out the word wall tasks because a lot of the Abridge Academy lessons have got integrated word wall activities. You can then switch those up to a different format, so it's reviewing it in a slightly different context. But
It's
don't be
gotta be
afraid to redo that content.
it's gotta be a huge confidence booster for the kid to go through it the second time, and they get done, they're like, "Yes!"
Exactly, and it
It's
shows how much
gotta be
progress they've
like that.
made.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
Right.
They love redoing things that they actually know because it boosts their confidence and it allows them to apply it in a different context, perhaps. Because
There you
also,
go.
sometimes when you first learnt it, let's say, I don't know, they learnt about fruit or something, and that was way back in the very early unit at the beginning of that semester. And then later on, they learnt about like present continuous tense in the context of what clothes you're wearing, like I am wearing a hat or whatever. But when they learn about fruits, they only learn to say I like. So now you
Right.
can go back and say, now you know how to use a present continuous tense. We're going to combine together these two things you learnt in different units, and we're going to say, okay, I am eating an apple rather than
Right.
I like apples. So I mean,
Well,
it's
we're
just a
back to
very
the apples
boring
again.
example. Going back to the apples again. That's a very basic example. But do you know what I mean? You can start to combine together things they've learned in different units and apply different combinations of vocabulary and grammar and speaking skills and listening and reading and writing, all that stuff you have to learn that sometimes get built kind of in their brain bit by bit and combine it together into a different context.
It's
I
perfect.
think is really powerful.
It is. It's very powerful. I think people misunderstand the value of going back. And it's not literally going back, it's taking those lessons and showing them how to combine them into that context. I like to do the spiral and scaffolding together. So we're coming back to it, but we're adding another layer. That's where the scaffold comes in,
Mhm.
right? So it's
Exactly.
and it's so funny because people will say, "Oh, but we're doing it again." Yes, but we're adding the next level to it. We're going a little bit deeper. We're combining that new material to an older topic, so it's easier for you to digest it.
And it's interesting, I sometimes get asked that by teachers when it comes to like teachers who are new to the Abridge Academy curriculum.
Mm.
Sometimes they'll ask me, when do students learn the past tense? What lesson? What lesson will I
Every
teach
year.
students the past tense?
Every
And I'm
year.
like,
Every
well, the entire of level 4 kind of focuses on past tense. Like they start learning about it at the beginning of level 4, but I don't have one lesson. I
right?
mean, past
Right.
tense in particular, so many irregular verbs. We certainly cannot have one lesson that teaches the entire of the past tense in half an hour. It's just not a thing that you can possibly
25
give
minutes.
or achieve. No chance. In fact, it's not even a whole unit. It's like a whole
Right.
level, and it's that idea of what you said about a spiral curriculum, where you learn a little bit, and then you practice it, and then you learn a slight variation on that. Like
Mhm.
first, you learn simple affirmative sentences. Yesterday, I went to the park. Well, actually, probably learn regular verbs first. Actually, yesterday I played tennis, and then the next lesson you learn how to answer the question. What did you do yesterday? And the yes, I did, no, I didn't answers to yes, no questions, for example. And then a bit later, you'll learn about, negative sentences. I
Right.
didn't play in the park yesterday, or I wasn't happy yesterday. What's the difference between did and was? When do we use each one for talking about the past?
Mhm.
These kind of things. So this idea of everything building on each other and constantly consolidating and
Coming back.
repeating and practicing it in different contexts, in different ways. Um, yeah, I think sometimes people get very hung up on like the knowledge aspect, you know, like memorizing irregular past tense forms, for example. And they think that if you've learnt a list of irregular verbs, you know the past
You
tense.
got it.
And
That's
you
it.
And it's like,
That's
well,
it.
magically
You're
know
no.
how
done.
to apply it to every
You're done.
conversation.
I
Exactly. And there's
I
also all the different skills, right? Okay, you might be able to listen and understand things like comprehension, reading and listening, perhaps first, but to be able to speak and use the past tense is another skill again, and to be able to write it. And there's all the spelling rules around like past tense spelling, like ed or ied that ends in a y, and when do you
right.
duplicate the consonant? There's all these different spelling rules and stuff. That's another level again, and it's
Right?
sort of yeah. Sorry, that was my rant, but you know what I mean. It's one of those things I think is so
Go, girl.
challenging for for you to teach, and it's so important. It's not just past tense. There's about a million other examples we could have picked for that,
Mhm.
but consolidating and practicing and building on learning is so important.
I'm just really happy that you mentioned that because a lot of people, I do subscribe to the master and move on, but it's not master, move on, and
Never do it
never
again.
visit again. It's okay, we're done with this level. We're going to circle back around to it later when we get to the next to bring it all together. And a lot of people forget that. And parents and students forget it as well. I've had parents, no, they've already learned that. I'm like, well, they learned that at like level 2. We're now
Right.
at like level 4.
Gosh.
We need to circle around.
I had this discussion with a parent the other
Yeah,
day, and she said, "Why are we doing present continuous again? We did it in the last textbook." I go,
right.
"Yeah, you know what? You're going to do it in every textbook for the rest of your life." That's just the way it works. You
It's
you don't have it. You don't have it the first time you go through it or the second time. It's going to take maybe 5, 6, 7 times, you know?
And even, the amount of stuff you learn, it builds on, you know.
Right, right,
Um, you start with simple examples and you build it to like more complicated examples. You have more
right.
extended sentences. You have that continual practice.
How to work the prepositions in there and, uh,
Hmm.
you know, things like that.
well,
And we don't want our lessons to feel like boring grammar lessons. So
Right.
yeah,
Oh God, that's
Teacher Cole needs to not fall asleep.
exactly.
It's pretty bad when the teacher falls asleep. I'm just saying. Oh, Katie, this has been really, really interesting. And I'm really glad we had you today. So before we go, is there anything that you would like to maybe let our listeners know, maybe a little bit more about Abridge Academy, how they can find you? Do you have any specials coming up this holiday season?
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And really, really appreciate, as I said, the opportunity to come on the podcast and chat to everyone and share some of these insights with teachers. And of course, a little bit of promotion for Abridge Academy. Really appreciate the shout out.
do it, do
But
it.
yeah, Abridge Academy, as I mentioned, super interactive, engaging lesson materials for your online classes. It's primarily aimed at teachers. Parents, if you're doing more of a homeschooling kind of vibe, then you're welcome to check it out. And I've already talked already, all the stuff is included, but there's a free tier. So if you're vaguely interested, please check out the free tier because it's free. It's free forever. There's no like restrictions on it or something. And it gives you access to basically everything you need to get started with new students with the curriculum, including all the trial classes, the placement test, onboarding guides, and a whole bunch of lessons for free, and all the holiday lessons as well. So I know this session was mostly talking about like what to do during the holidays with students. Well, everything you need is going to be in the free tier. So check it out and sign up for free. We also mentioned a little bit about some alternative class formats and things you can do. Like we mentioned the debating classes, the science theme classes. I do a lot of group classes during the holidays and short courses on like reading and creative writing and stuff. And again, there's loads of things like that included in the curriculum. So do check those out if you're interested in learning more. Particularly those ones, the holiday theme stuff is all listed in the expansion courses section of the curriculum if you're kind of lost and trying to find things on the website. But yeah, I'm not doing anything special in terms of discounts and things. I'm very much not a discount person. I know this is a bit controversial and people always ask me, Katie, do you have discounts? But I'd rather
I
just keep
got
the
your
price
email.
low all year round. Like if I have to offer discounts, it means that ordinarily I'd have to put the price up in order to give people a discount for the special holiday discount. So I'd rather just keep the price low for everyone. So yeah,
Right.
there's no special discounts going on. I'd rather low pressure. Whenever you want to, you can sign up. It's
No,
going to be the
I
same price pretty
respect
much
that. I
forever.
like the honesty on that. Just if you're going to keep the prices low year round, I think that's better than a sale.
I
Yeah,
got
that's what
the
I figure. And
I
I
got
know other
the
people are doing sales, so check out other companies that are doing sales right now if you want to. But Abridge Academy is always going to be there for you at the fair price whenever you want to sign up.
How do we get to the Abridge Academy?
I'm sure you guys are going to put a link in the description of the video,
Yes, we
but
will
it's
put a link.
abridgeacademy.com.
Okay.
But yeah, I know you
Yep.
guys have got a referral link, so put it
Yep.
somewhere around.
Yep.
Oh,
Yes.
Katie,
Good.
wow. Well, thank you for sharing these wonderful ideas and all these insights. I love the plugs for the other platforms that we can use that we can integrate with your materials and the amazing insights really that you had in different ways that parents can support their children during breaks and going back into school. So that's really, really awesome. I hope our listeners are really inspired to try it out because some of these activities sound really amazing. And actually, I'm gonna check out this free platform, this free trial as well, because I don't know how I managed to think that I've looked at a lot of different things recently. That's my only excuse. I have no idea why I thought this was a software and not materials. And I collect materials like some women collect purses. So I am definitely going to be testing this out as well. So I think everybody should give it a try. And we look forward to having you back on, especially if you're going to be incorporating anything new or have some updates. Let us know and we'll bring you back.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you, Katie.
Don't leave. Don't
Okay.
leave.
Now I'm going to pause. Okay. So here we go. Hold on a second.